cnbc TV 18 and Bandhan Bank present Sashakt India, powering the MSME engine.
The medium and small scale sector in India has been particularly badly hit by the COVID pandemic. This is about 6.3 crore units, which employs about 11 crore people. And if you take them as 11 crore families, that is about 50 crore people, 40% of the population, which means it is not just an economic problem, it is much more than an economic problem. Hello and welcome to Sashakt India, powering the Indian MSME, the forum where we speak to thought leaders who are experts in this area to find out how we can convert probably the victims of economic development into powerhouses who can charge India's economic development. I have with me two such people today who know the terrain well. I have with me Dr. Pronab, former chairman of India's Statistics Commission, former chief statistician, a person who knows India's data like no one else. I also have with me Mr. Chandra, Ghosh, the CEO of Bandhan Bank, one of those few financiers who knows the smells and sounds of rural India and of tier 3, tier 4, tier 5 cities, which is where the MSMEs really thrive. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me in this conversation, and I do hope we can end the conversation with some concrete suggestions. Dr. Sen, to you first. Well, at least 40% of India has had the rough end of the stick. What is your sense? Is this a problem that will get resolved as we recover, or are we going to see some permanently maimed segments?
Look, I think let's start with simply an observation, which is that the MSME sector has a resilience which is inherent to the sector. There's a lot of creativity, there's a lot of energy. The problem, of course, is that we have spent a long time in moving the MSME sector from what was essentially a survival strategy for many, many people to a situation where they are very active and dynamic economic agents. A large chunk of this move has been the formalization of the credit that the MSMEs had access to. If you think about MSMEs in the bad old days, they were almost entirely dependent upon family and friends of finance or from the money lenders, the Mahajans. Then we started getting a little bit of movement coming from some of the NBFCs, particularly the Undis and the Nidis. But there again, the relationships were informal. So the access to formal credit, which really, Mr. Ghosh should take a lot of credit for it, has been the emergence of the microfinance institutions. It's made an enormous amount of difference, and then it has spawned off a whole variety of sort of approaches towards MSME funding across the financial sector. Now, this is what is currently at jeopardy. So intrinsically, as entrepreneurs, I think they will come back. They'll come back strongly. The question is whether we'll be able to give them the funding that they need. And if we cannot do that, we are pushing them back by 30 years.
Okay. You put 2 points on the table, sir, which I will check with Mr. Ghosh from his experience. Mr. Ghosh, one point that Dr. Sen is making is that the MSME sector is inherently a dynamic sector and has been able to come back. Its creativity and its dynamism has been proven. Is that your experience? Because you know this sector very well. Would you agree with this description?
I fully agree on that. If you see that from today's 20 years before, when I started as a credit to the bottom of the pyramid, when I started it on that, how much of the people that come forward to start the enterprise and their dependency from money lenders has come out, and now they are making the best of the entrepreneur, some of them. So there is lots of opportunities in our country, and which people can be reached on that. So there is good entrepreneurship trained of the people of country. Only we need to create the environment, not only the funding point of view. Many other things also there. But when they find from that, yes, the funding is the main issue. They are not any problem for funding. Automatically, they are thinking in a scale. Automatically, they are thinking to diversify, and that so they are searching their own way as a marketing and the quality of the product, the competition with the others, and very many of the case we have been seeing that. And this is also major part is Dr. Shan have been talked about. It is coming from rural, and rural is now untouched by the banking and financial industry. To encourage them, to support them, they are coming out from that on that. I agree.
No, I mean, this is very convincing, Mr. Ghosh, the way you put it, and you've repeatedly told us in previous conversations also that, if the macros are provided to them in the form of roads and water and electricity, then their dynamism can rise manifold. And I'll come to Dr. Sen on that part in just a bit, but I just wanted to stretch this funding point that Dr. Sen is raising. You know the microfinance industry like no one else. Do you think they are reasonably banked? We've got a fund of microfinance companies in various states. As well, there is now Bandhan, which of course not all of it is very poor people. But have we banked the country enough?
Not enough.
Okay.
We have been needing the 30 Bandhan Bank type model to cover the India, the poor people or bottom of the pyramid, to encourage them and funding them to come out from the poverty and from the money lenders. We should like to push the credit in a rural, like the micro level, and they will come out on that. And they have a good capacity and capacity. They can show themselves as the best entrepreneur in the country.
But Dr. Sen, repeatedly, Mr. Ghosh has pointed out to me in several previous conversations also that the whole macro ambience is not helpful for micro enterprises at the rural level. Do you think we are concentrating on the wrong things? If from the start we'd only thought of waterways, roads and electricity for all, then micro enterprises take care of themselves.
No, they don't.
No.
Those they cannot provide for themselves. But those are not enough. They are necessary, but they are not sufficient. You can provide all the infrastructure requirements of the MSMEs. The problem, of course, is that in the absence of a supportive framework, and I'm talking about essentially a policy framework, they are going to be hamstrung. Now, that is in the nature of the problem that we are facing. The fact of the matter is, again, Mr. Ghosh can correct me if I'm wrong, but the reason why the microfinance industry actually made so much inroads was because at some point they were able to tap into bank finance in a larger way. Right? What were the microfinance institutions doing? Microfinance institutions were essentially acting as the rural agency of the banking sector. The main money was coming from the banking sector. Right? Now, would that be necessary if the Indian banking system was 30 times as large as Mr. Ghosh suggested? And the answer is probably no. You would have enough rural banking in place to be able to do this. Of course, the microfinance institutions bring a lot more to the table in terms of their expertise and their handholding. But that can be done without the finance part of it. There are NGOs who do this without financing. The point is that we are in a situation where, because the banking sector simply doesn't have the width and the reach, we are starting to have to move towards innovative solutions. But when you do innovative solution, you are actually taking a situation where the level of uncertainty in the system goes up. A bank dealing directly with a customer has a level of certainty which a bank dealing through a
banking correspondent.
NBFC, an NBFC or a microfinance institution, their level of information is much lower. And so it becomes a longer chain of trust and relationship and information flows. That's what we really need to look at. So banks, I think Mr. Ghosh is absolutely right, should be considered as much a part of the macro ecosystem as roads and electricity and what have you.
Okay. I never thought that I would be discussing banking policy. I was expecting that we were going to discuss macroeconomics of a different nature. But this brings me to a more familiar terrain. Mr. Ghosh, then what would your advice be to policymakers? Would your advice be that, this banking correspondent experiment, all that was to bring this, what is a very urban Indian banking space, down to the rural areas? The whole idea of banking correspondent or microfinance or NBFC or even small bank and its earlier avatar, the local area bank, the cooperative bank, all that was to build that bridge between an urban bank to the last mile. Which of these bridges are succeeding according to you? Should we go the cooperative way? Should we go the banking correspondent way, microfinance way?
I am coming on that. What are the key points we are talking about MSME? The three alphabets, M, S, M. Last S and M. All of the big banks are focusing. MSME means actually the last M. And medium enterprise, not in the micro, not in the small. All little bit working by the public sector bank. And private sector bank, and they are take over from the public bank the S category of the enterprise in their medium. Nobody is looking on that at the micro level, which is micro, small, medium enterprise. In the first micro, nobody is not that much focused on that. They are very comfortably lending on that. So who are making this the micro? Actually the micro credit organization and other NBFC. And the NBFC, we should be like to little bit flexible by the regular point of view, government point of view, how they can be reached the more of the micro level people. If they cater those numbers, then practically that will be like to promote one level to another level, micro to small, small to medium. So we are policy and everything should not be focused only the talking micros, small and medium enterprise, but they are more focused on that small and medium enterprise, not the micro enterprise. So we should be like to focus by the bank regulator. It is not like the different types of regulatory body should be like to work on that. Can we focus on that micro as a MSME micro or micro? Can you give the one national body of the focus as a regulatory which can be focused and push on that? How they are make it a flexible way to reach more people, not the amount basis. How many customers have been reached? How many they are promoted from new to credit? That should help to build upon that.
Mr. Ghosh, you're questioning, you're giving some suggestions for policy, both in terms of how RBI should be organized perhaps, or RBIs should be organized, or how government can push. Okay, I want to get both these things thrashed out. I have to take a break, but we are coming back and the discussion is getting hotter. We are coming back in a minute with our two experts.
cnbc TV 18 and Bandhan Bank present Sashakt India, powering the MSME engine. cnbc TV 18 and Bandhan Bank present Sashakt India, powering the MSME engine.
Welcome back to Sashakt India, powering the Indian MSME. I'm talking to two stalwarts of the sector, Dr. Pronab and Mr. Shekhar Ghosh. Before the break, the two gentlemen are telling us that, you can reach roads and electricity and water supply, but reaching microcredit to the last man in India is not something that both the Indian banking regulator or the Indian government have quite succeeded. So let me pick it up from there. Dr. Sen, there is a plethora of policies that both the Indian government and RBI have attempted. The most important of them being the priority sector. I mean, in which other country does the government tell the banking sector? I mean, it's not even their money, it's the depositors' money. But the government has told the banking sector, you shall give 40% to X, Y, Z, small farmer, micro enterprise, etc. They've done their bit. In which country do you have even more micro goals? Mudra shall be given so much. And mind you, public sector banks are trying to reach that Mudra numbers. What more can the government do? They're doing it to what is not even their money. It is taxpayer savings of depositors.
No, this is the point. The government has been acting on this for a while, as I said. The whole idea was to wean away very large chunks of our economy, which is the MSME sector plus agriculture, away from the clutches of the moneylender and move them to the formal. Now, it takes two hands to clap. The borrower is ready to move, but if the lender is not ready to give, then your problem is not solved. So every step that the government has taken has been essentially to persuade or cajole or, if necessary, force the formal financial sector to actually reach out. The point is that the level of comfort that exists in the formal sector with this kind of lending is still very low, even after all these years. So the ability of the average bank manager to be able to appreciate the business proposition that's being put to him and to take a call on whether this is going to be successful or not is extremely limited. One of the things that I would really like to say, and I've never seen this, I don't know, I'm sure Mr. Ghosh has, is what is the training curriculum of bank officers? Are they actually trained in micro and small loans? I suspect they are not. They use the usual yardsticks that we teach in postgraduate economics in terms of project appraisal and project finance. That's applicable only to the large organized sector, maybe to some of the medium. None of that is actually applicable to the borrowers we are talking about.
Okay. That straight away is a question to you, Mr. Ghosh. How would you reorganize the personnel in the Indian banking sector?
Correctly mentioned, Dr. Singh, the supply of the skilled people. The banking skilled people are not available in the rural. They are all people is an MBA from the very much high level education field. But when you like to see the assets of the micro level of the borrower's capacity, is a higher secondary or graduate is a very enough on that.
Okay.
Only need some
numerical skills
to understand about in that what is the cost expenditure of that family, what are the income. So in that sense, it is not available in our country. So that in the Bandhan, from beginning, now we have the 11 training center across the country I set up. And I given the 3,500 people training in a month and regular basis and refreshers every 3 months, 6 months, only to case study analysis on that. So that is not yet in that much in the rural India. And second, another point, if you see, the urban people are not interested to go to rural. If I not build up the skill in the rural, so rural branch opening by the bank or NBFC or MFI very, very challenging on that. They cannot be go to this rural. They cannot be left to rural to work on that area. Of course, there is a health infrastructure, education infrastructure that also would be needed. But we have need also, if we see that the develop the skill in the rural, if our national skill development fund can be linked on that skill development bigger way.
Yeah.
I hope that can be helped. A huge number of people can be get the job. Not need in a very high educated, very first class result, not necessary on that.
Mr. Ghosh, I don't have as much power as a press person, but hopefully CNBC TV 18 has. And we are going to say that people like you should be in the National Skill Development Mission so that the right advice is given. I'm sure there are well-meaning people over there. And maybe this advice has not even reached their ears, that you should raise a cadre of people from the rural areas who become bankers or financiers or banking correspondents, bank employees. Dr. Sen, you want to comment on what Mr. Ghosh is saying?
I'm completely with him, but I also would like to give a cautionary note. And the cautionary note comes from Dr. Kurian did exactly this. He set up the Institute of Rural Management in Anand. And what has happened? Anand has been, Arima has been completely taken over by urban India.
Yes.
Yeah. So now Arima is pretty much on par with the IIMs. Rural India is getting no benefit from Arima. Take it from me. So the point, I think, in fact, I would reinforce what Mr. Ghosh is saying. And the point that is to be made is not only should there be the students come from rural India, right? In fact, people from urban India should be actively barred.
Okay.
Otherwise, take it from me, institutional capture will happen.
Okay. Mr. Ghosh.
I have been say that if it is because of it is a one single Anand, for that reason it is a different way to go. If you see that the thousands of Anand we can be developed in rural India, this situation will not come on that. So of course in the supply will be more and automatically they are work in a rural.
Okay. Well, I must say, Mr. Ghosh and Dr. Sen, this is a Bengali-dominated conversation. I didn't realize that. But this has been one of the most fruitful conversations in how we can genuinely power the MSMEs. Thank you very much, Dr. Sen and Mr. Ghosh.
CNBC TV 18 and Bandhan Bank present Sashakt India, powering the MSME engine.